Okay, welcome to this impromptu late night stream. This is the first activity on our channel that we've had for over 27 days, I think, so a few minutes. And part of that is because I've been doing stuff with my day job, which is University of Colorado, Denver. I just ran a study abroad to the Czech Republic with 11 students, and so I had to be off doing that and traveling and taking care of that. So I'm back, and I saw that this update had come out when I was gone, but I wasn't able to really install it or anything. I didn't have a laptop or a computer with me that I was using Logic with. In fact, on the trip, I was using Logic for iPad the entire time, and that was for another video. I think we'll be talking about that. It worked really well and is a great option, even though there were certainly some issues that we had with it. So more on that another time. But I just installed Logic Pro 10.7.9, and I'm pulling up the release notes for the very first time. So this is not one of those videos where I've prepared a bunch of thoughts. I'm literally just going to be looking through the things that are here, and we'll go from there. So we'll see if there was anything super useful, or if it's just a bunch of minor things. I haven't heard any buzz about big things, and so we'll see exactly what we're kind of looking for with that. So the first section, of course, the stability and reliability category. We should do bingo and see how many times it says will no longer quit unexpectedly or something like that in here. I'm sure we'd have a lot of bingos called out right away. But this first one fixes an issue where adjusting the threshold control in the strip silence could cause Logic Pro. I actually have heard from a few people some issues they're having with strip silence. It's not a feature that I typically use myself all that often, and so I hadn't had any issues because I wasn't using it. But I do know that some people are having some other issues with strip silence. So hopefully this update fixes some of those as well. Another one resolves an issue where 32-bit audio files might be damaged when adjusting their speed. I mean, they're really rolling out the 32-bit audio features or just workable functionality really slowly. I know a lot of people really care about the 32-bit audio for decent reasons. I think there's some really big benefits to 32-bit audio in terms of the quality, but honestly, you get to a point where it's pretty minimal in most workflows to have that. And so it's really kind of a smaller group of Logic users that are really caring about the 32-bit functionality in the first place. Except more and more audio interfaces are using 32-bits, and so just working with what your interface can do can be really important. So cool. Fixes an issue where audio unit software could cause Logic Pro to quit unexpectedly when MIDI 2.0 is enabled. I would love for somebody, I know that MIDI 2.0 is a thing. I would love to know exactly what functionality Logic is doing with MIDI 2.0. There's so little documentation about exactly what turning that on with a compatible controller, for instance, is really bringing to the table. They really just kind of released MIDI 2.0 functionality. The manual doesn't say anything about it. No one's really talking about it. And so I don't know. It's like I don't have the tools to be able to tell exactly what functionality has been added. I'm curious. And if anybody's watching this later and wants to expound on that, I know what MIDI 2.0 is and what it does, but it's unclear exactly what they've brought to the software with that. Fixes an issue where Logic Pro could quit unexpectedly when delete and shuffle left is performed with a marquee selection. thank you for not ruining more people's days unexpectedly, is what that really means. It's like you don't know that it's coming, but that one thing is something you're going to do at some point and it just blips, closes. Okay, cool. Fixes an issue where Logic Pro could quit unexpectedly when launched with the option to create a new empty project. Okay. I never had that set up like that. Resolves an issue where Logic Pro might quit unexpectedly when analyzing audio files for flex editing while running in Rosetta mode. This is something that happened to me right before my trip. So let's hope that it fixes that issue. I definitely had Logic Pro quit when analyzing audio files. Makes you go, oh, right at that moment. Improves stability when scanning for audio units. I'll believe that when I see it. Okay, so recording. Recording MIDI on aux subtracks of a multi-output instrument now works. On aux subtracks. Okay, cool. I haven't run into that, but I don't do it that way very often, if at all. So I'm sure somebody ran into that pretty quickly. Logic Pro no longer creates empty audio tracks when recording in cycle mode if the recording setting create tracks and mute in cycle mode is enabled. The audio file type is set to wave, and there is a quantized value set. Okay, that's a pretty specific fix. I like it. Takes and comping. Comp segments created by dragging from right to left now play back correctly. It's like the things you didn't know weren't working correctly, right? Plugins. The range setting and pitch correction plugin now recalled correctly after the plugin is closed and then reopened. Okay. I probably ran into that without even knowing it. FabFilter Pro Q, something with that, blah, blah, blah. I love the FabFilter stuff, but I don't have it on my home system. But they seem to do a lot of fixes with that. So it's a tool that obviously some people are using at Apple or somebody who's reporting a lot of bugs. Thank you for those who are doing that. Sampler and quick sampler. The locate button in the sampler missing files dialog now works as expected. The mixer fixes an issue where paste channel strip settings could be applied to a selected channel strip instead of the channel strip where the paste command menu was chosen. Okay, that seems like actually a relatively big bug if you're doing that. Resolves an issue where unsoloing a track in the channel strip inspector would also unsolo all other soloed tracks. I haven't run into that, but I've done some unsoloing and it hasn't happened. So that must be more of an isolated thing before this. Probably some other, key things happening simultaneously, but not just every time. Bounce and export. The loudness meter now continues to show values after a bounce. Okay, cool. Import restores ability to assign tracks to external MIDI by pressing Option while importing a standard MIDI file. Okay, so that looks like it was there, taken away. Assign tracks to external MIDI. I see. So what that's just saying, when you import it, that's not a feature I've used because I don't have a lot of external hardware units right now. I do. I've got some synthesizers and stuff, but most of my stuff is like stupid MIDI stuff, early MIDI stuff. And so I don't have a lot of like general MIDI or things that I would attach in a certain way like that. I'm going to use instrument tracks rather than external MIDI tracks, which external MIDI, I'd have to actually try that out and see if that's what they're saying, but I don't think I would do it that way. I'd probably assign it after the fact anyway. Cool. Apple Loops, the content of Apple Loops dragged into projects with time signatures other than 4/4 no longer unexpectedly offset. Woohoo! For all of those using Apple Loops, which sometimes I still do in various situations. Not often, but sometimes. Volume and pan can now be reliably adjusted using an attached controller or control surface or MIDI controller in cases where the setting record automation with MIDI region is enabled. awesome. The Launchpad Pro Mark III control surface now works properly with Logic Pro. And the world breathes a sigh of relief. Thank you for making the Launchpad Pro work. Anybody have that device and using it? Let me know. Editing fixes an issue where it was not possible to access tools in the piano roll using the right. I think I did run into this one not too long ago. Yeah, I think I did without even realizing and thought, what's happening? It's like that kind of stuff drives me crazy. You don't even know that it's broken. It makes you crazy. Paste at original position now works in the piano roll. Great. The create note command from the contextual menu of the piano roll now creates a note at the pitch where the pointer was originally clicked. That's handy. Resolves an issue where the visible area in the piano roll could unexpectedly shift in pitch when entering notes okay, cool. So just another fix. And some general. So we're almost at the end here. Not a huge update. Handy. General restores ability. Typo. Thank you for proofreading your total crap sometimes, Apple Logic team. Seriously. This right here is the problem. When you can't have the attention to detail to even get the documentation right, anytime that whoever's doing this, hopefully it's not the coders who also just can't do grammar or spelling, but anytime they're making one change and they're just having typos, it means that we're going to have another bug coming in later. Attention to detail is so critical. And I'm not great at it myself, but at the same time, if I were doing a job that required it, I feel like it would be a huge priority for me. So, geez, just spell stuff right. That's where bugs come from in software too. Little things that have one letter wrong, right? And all of a sudden it's Logic Pro quits when you are moving the marquee tool with the shuffle thing in the wrong direction, right? I mean, that's where that all starts. Stupid typos. Restores ability for regions on frozen tracks to mute when soloing other regions. Great. I didn't run into that one, but I'm probably sure I would have at some point since I do use frozen tracks still every once in a while. Mostly on my laptop, not on my Mac Studio. I don't think I've frozen anything on my Mac Studio of late. I mean, it's like, I probably won't anytime soon. Auto colorize tracks now works for software instrument tracks as expected. The pickup clock key command now moves automation with regions or asks, okay, cool. Regions created on MIDI tracks are now named for the track rather than being named for the being named MIDI region. Yeah, I probably just recorded into MIDI regions, not created them out of thin air, but that I could see would probably drive some people crazy. The tab to transient key command now works reliably with audio files that have not yet been analyzed for transients. Handy. Projects created from templates saved with record enabled tracks now open with those tracks record enabled. I don't know if that was a feature before and they've just added that, but dang, that is so handy. That may be one of those like really nice hidden amazing features inside an update like this. It's like I've never even thought about saving tracks with record enables in a certain way already set up for my templates, but this means that you can. So that means you could have like a template where you have, your keyboard set up, your controller set up, and when you load it up, all of the tracks in a certain way are already record armed. And so that's super handy. Handy if you're doing things, for instance, in a certain circumstances, certainly. But if you just want to pull up a template and have all that stuff record armed, say you're doing a recording session in a studio and you're doing like intense drum recordings on a weekly basis, instead of having to go through and record arm everything, you can just load up the template and have that ready to go. That's really useful. Can be for some people. Okay, cool. Frozen software instrument tracks no longer continue to output audio when the track is set to off. Thank you for making things work as they should. And then region borders of MIDI regions recorded in projects with time signatures other than 4/4 are no longer unexpectedly extended. Thank you. I like it. This is a small one overall, but let me tell you something. This is 10.7.9, right? Oof. 10.7.9. That means either 10.8 is next, and a 0.8 would mean, theoretically, although Apple sometimes, or the Logic team sometimes releases things that are smaller on big numbers and bigger on small numbers, right? If you know what I'm talking about. But 10.8 is likely to come out at the same time we have our new OS 10 coming out, right? And new iOS for iPad, because now we're not just dealing with an ecosystem of Logic that works on every piece of software. We're also working with an iPad version, and the two have to work together, right? And so because of that, the update schedule gets a lot more complex. Infinitely more complex in some ways. Infinite, you know what I mean. It gets more complex because to have the back and forth functionality of the two, sometimes Apple has released iOS, iPad OS, like a month or two apart from OS 10, right? I mean, they don't always come together. And now they have to think, okay, if we release iPad OS on this date and OS 10 is coming in this date, but we have to release the new version of Logic, it's going to be a small point upgrade, right? And so with a small point upgrade of Logic on the iPad, they have to release the corresponding one on the desktop, right? So now we're in a situation where they put themselves in a corner, or they've already released some of the stuff in 10.7.9 and just not talked about it, because they can't just release 10.7.9.1. I mean, they've never gone to 4 points. And so now they have to do a 10.8 or something when they're doing all the big updates this fall. So it's interesting. I love thinking about these type of corners that they're putting themselves into, because now it's a more complex system with Logic Pro and the iPad. We have to actually, they have to actually think about how those two things work together. If they update one, not the other one, and they don't work together, then everyone who's already upset about an iPad version of Logic having a subscription model are going to be like, wait, okay. And speaking about the iPad version for Logic and the subscription model, which now we're into past the trial version, we're now paying on a monthly basis. I mean, the idea behind something like that, isn't it that they can do bug fixes and updates and add features and stuff? So they release this thing and then they just go radio silent. I mean, you got to know that there's a Reaper user who's just like laughing about how quiet Apple is with updates on software that we're paying for on a monthly basis now, with nothing changing on a monthly basis. And if they're not going to change it on a monthly basis, why aren't we all just paying one time, right? One time, and then we feel good about them not updating on a monthly basis. But if they're just going to let this thing like slide and never update it, then what's the point of the subscription model? That's like a commitment to each other, right? I give you money every month, you make changes every month. Or why am I paying you every month for something that is the same exact as it was when you released it? I know we're new into this and we're going to be getting some updates. But geez, cheese and crackers, Apple. Like don't make us do subscription stuff and then like make it feel like we should have just paid the one time. Don't get me started. I know all of you are sitting there listening and saying amen, preach it, but it's late. And that's why none of you are chatting right this moment. Anyway, this is a shorter stream. We're back on streaming. We're back on doing videos. We're going to be doing lots of content here as we get back into the end of summer and moving into what will hopefully eventually be our first Logic Pro for iPad update. I mean, it has to come at some point. And so when it does, we'll be talking about it and looking at it. So other big stuff coming down the tube soon, shortly. So start getting back in the habit of coming and checking out what we're doing on this channel. And we'll be talking soon. Later, everybody. Bye.